divorce. All right, this is an interesting scripture. So Matthew 19, 3-9. Some Pharisees came to Jesus and testing him, asking, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any reason at all? Okay, any reason at all. Can we just divorce for whatever reason? I'm emphasizing that for a reason, and we'll get to that. And he answered and said, have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, for this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let no man separate. That's the intended value of what marriage is. There's no divorce. They said to him, why then did Moses command to give her a certificate of divorce and send her away? Do I have that scripture here? No. All right, so they're talking about Deuteronomy 24:1. And if you read this without getting down to that depth of it, you're going to misunderstand what this is getting at. And a lot of people do. Deuteronomy 24:1. When a man takes a wife and marries her, and it happens that she finds no favor in his eyes because he has found some indecency in her, and he writes her a certificate of divorce and puts it in her hand and sends her out of from the house.
That was good.
You like that? That's my charades. Some Jews thought that this meant that man could divorce for any reason at all. Remember, that's where that last verse was, any reason at all. This was a hotly debated topic. There were two schools of theology competing at the time, and they had these two views in it, and it was always friction in this. So they're saying, Jesus, where do you stand on this? Okay, that's what this is about. And if you miss that context, I think people make this into something it's not. And I'm going to continue with that. He said to them, so here's the reason why Moses gave that order for the boot, okay? Because of the hardness of your heart, Moses permitted you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it has not been this way. So Jesus is pointing out that the Old Testament law is not necessarily perfect morality. There are moral compromises that God made in the Old Testament that it was not that way from the beginning, okay? So what Jesus did when he quoted, you shall leave your mother and father, and two shall become one, that's how it was at the beginning. He went further back before the law and went to the very intended value of it. So keeping that value is important. The New Testament is a more perfect morality than the Old because it gets to the root of these issues and the heart of these issues and God's intended value for these issues. That's something that was getting lost in Jesus' time that he was correcting. So even the law had things that God doesn't necessarily like, but compromised with for the sake of, he had to keep the society together for what it was at the time. He was working with people. We all know God works with people for where they're at. He accepts people even while they're sinning. He accepts people, as long as their heart's right, he says, you're accepted, and then he helps you out of that to grow out of that place of sin, right? So it's that moral compromise that God is bringing and allowing through the law. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for immorality and marries another woman commits adultery. And so this is where knowing the context we just went over is really important, because Jesus is clarifying that the law wasn't intended to allow divorce for any reason at all, but only for sexual immorality. Hello. And this is not saying, and this is what I want to emphasize that people get wrong these days. This is not saying that a second marriage is adultery. It's not saying that a second marriage is adultery. Okay? He's clarifying what we just went over, which was the debate going on. It's not saying a second marriage is adultery. That's a common misconception. And it's saying that an unlawful divorce followed by a new marriage is adultery. So if I just walk out of my wife's house and go marry someone else without signing some divorce papers, it's adultery because I don't have a legal divorce. All right? If you marry someone else without divorcing the first person, it doesn't count as a divorce. It is adultery because of that. And what happens is, if you're not following the law and you're separating and writing a certificate of divorce over something that's an illegal reason, it's an illegal divorce. And therefore, it's not a divorce in God's eyes because it's illegal. So then to remarry is adultery because you don't have grounds to divorce in the first place. And again, except for immorality, and this is specifically more sexual immorality, but, and also, this isn't exhaustive. Except for immorality, it's not exhaustive, and I'm going to get to that. A lot of people do think this is like the only reason you could ever get divorced. This is why I said that except for immorality part that Jesus said it's not exhaustive, because Paul took the liberty to add another part, right? So he's in the context of talking about divorce and remarriage and Christian marriage and some boundaries on Christian marriage and clarifications on what boundaries should and shouldn't be in marriage. Yet if the unbelieving one leaves, now leaving in Rome was a divorce. All right, nowadays we have legal papers because it's connected to the numbers the governments have assigned to us and stuff like that. But in Rome, that's divorce. So if an unbelieving one divorces you, that's leaving. Like in Rome, it's just if two people agree to divorce, that's a divorce legally. That's it. All right, they didn't have paperwork to sign. That was Rome. So if the unbelieving one leaves, let him leave. The brother or the sister is not under bondage in such cases, but God has called us to peace. Now, that may apply to the way our paperwork works today. And I also don't think that if you've got an unbelieving spouse who is molesting your children or beating you up as a woman, or if as a man she's going out and cheating on you, and everyone's got broken hearts, and you've got young children that need a parent, and that parent's not there, I also don't believe that you should just wait around for 20 years for that person to never change. Give them like you said, give them a chance for God to work. But I also think that remarrying might be good if you have young children, especially who need a second parent in the house. If your kids are out of the house, that there's more room for growth there. But yeah, exactly. So these things all have to be brought into wisdom and personalized situation. I don't like just making a blanket statement of this is the only thing that's okay and that's not okay. Situations are individualized. I think we really have to stick to Scripture and recognize that almost all the divorces going on today are not scripturally okay. Almost all of them. And so, there are some that are okay in the eyes of God. There are exceptional situations, but most situations do not meet that criteria. Most of these divorces today are sin on both parties. It's both parties messing up. And again, don't separate what God has joined. Yeah. Marriage helps us be happier, healthier, live more fulfilled lives. Married people live up to 7 years longer and make more money. Holding conservative Christian values towards marriage and divorce decreases divorce rates. So just getting these values into us decreases divorce rates. Couples with strong faith have a 35% lower divorce rate. Having access to the resources, the social support, the education, the values, the connection to God, that all comes through the church. This helps people stay together. And divorce should just be a forbidden word for believers. And for children, those with two committed parents are better able to grow, learn, and be happy and healthy. The children of single mothers are more likely to be abused, neglected, poor, depressed, anxious, unintelligent, uneducated, and become criminals. So our marital values are one of the most important values we have in society.